That you can actually become, in some ways, the opposite gender or sex, whatever words you want to use, which is a lie. It's not true.
Wait, it's not true that medical transition changes your biology to be more in line with the sex you transition to? Why do trans women have boobies? That is a biological characteristic that is female. If you cannot transition your sex at all, why do I have boobies? So here we have Matt Walsh talking to a trans student at a college campus speech, and we'll see how Matt Walsh is going to dunk on this trans person.
Well, there's one other clip I wanted to play from last night before we move on, and I wish I could play the whole exchange, but it's too long. I have a kind of a longer clip that I'm going to play.
Yeah, we know that Matt Walsh doesn't like showing things that are too long because it doesn't make him look good. His What is a Woman documentary, he didn't want to show the full answer that the sociology professor gave when, asked to describe what's the difference between sex and gender. Matt Walsh really just skipped over it. Matt Walsh is not interested in full context. He's just interested in showing his little donkey clips and being done with it.
Still, but you can find the whole clip on my Twitter page. It's during the Q&A, a person who identifies as trans, who's going through transition right now, did come up to speak in the Q&A, and this doesn't happen very often. This is pretty rare. I mean, I do these Q&As, and anyone can come speak, and I'm always encouraging people who don't agree with me to come speak, and very rarely do they take me up on it. They'd rather go stay outside where they have their numbers and they can shout into megaphones and hold their signs and all of that.
That'd be really interesting if Matt put his money where his mouth is and actually debated someone who does debates on the left. But you will never see Matt Walsh actually debate somebody who is, knowledgeable about these topics and wants to debate in a formal setting. I would totally debate Matt Walsh, but there is no way that he would debate someone like me. People like him are just afraid of getting destroyed. They know that they're lying. They know that trying to spread hateful ideology, and they know what happens when they debate people that are knowledgeable on these topics. They lose hard, and so he's scared.
This was someone who actually came and spoke and stood up there, and I appreciate that. It takes courage. It takes guts to do that. From his perspective, this is like walking into the lion's den. This is behind enemy's territory. We're not his enemies, but that's how he would see it, and so it takes guts to do that.
Of course, Matt is misgendering this trans person. We're not enemy lions. I'm just gonna misgender you throughout this entire video.
This was an important conversation. I wanted to share a piece of it with you. Here it is.
8 months ago, I was diagnosed with gender dysphoria while I was inpatient here in UW-Madison. I looked into the research and talked to doctors, and through my journey, I decided to explore medically transitioning, because it's shown to decrease suicidal ideation, stuff like that.
This is a very hostile type of environment for them to be in, and it is so hard to come off looking good when they control a microphone. They can cut you off whenever they want to, and they have an audience that is immediately hostile to you and your beliefs. These are not the type of settings that are fair by any means. And so specifically, what Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and these types do is they only debate in these settings where they can debate college kids who, on average are going to be not very knowledgeable in these topics, and that it's much easier to, engage in dishonest tactics. They don't debate people in formal settings or fair settings because they know they would lose.
And since then, although I've had to deal with other issues such as transphobia and sexual assault, I've been more happier overall than I ever was before. And my question to you is, what specifically about medically transitioning do you think is so immoral that we should ignore the potential benefits? And why should I listen to you as somebody who's not a medical professional and has not experienced gender dysphoria?
There's a dishonesty behind it. Dishonesty in the false promises that they make.
False promises? How are people being lied to?
You can attain this image of maleness or femaleness.
That's what medical transition literally does. It literally alters your biology. You can absolutely attain that. People have realistic expectations about what they can and can't change going into gender transition, going into medical treatment. That's why, through these informed consent procedures, you are made aware of all of the effects and side effects, etc., of gender transition. You know what you can change. You have realistic expectations going into this.
But that you can actually become, in some ways, the opposite gender or sex, whatever words you want to use.
That is just factually true. You can take cross-sex hormones to alter your biology to be more in line with the sex you transition to. You can socially transition to alter, the societal role in which you're perceived and treated, to alter your lived social experience. Both of these things can be changed. That's just factual.
Which is a lie. It's not true.
Wait, it's not true that medical transition changes your biology to be more in line with the sex you transition to? Why do trans women have boobies? That is a biological characteristic that is female, that is true about trans women and cis women. If you cannot transition your sex at all, why do I have boobies?
You never can.
I can
And
pass. I have a horrible Adam's apple. My voice sounds like this. I still love myself. And there has
And
always
you
been
should.
money in making people happy, like wearing nice clothes or good food. It does cost a lot of money. That's why I can't get surgeries that would make me a lot happier.
But the
Why?
but the point of medicine is not supposed to be to make you happy in the moment. That's not the objective of medicine. The objective of medicine is your overall wellness. It's about treating what is actually wrong.
And it's a good thing that we have study after study after study after systematic literature review, which shows that gender transition improves the mental health and overall well-being of trans people in the long term. That's simply what the peer-reviewed literature shows. Matt is just arguing against empirical data. He is arguing against scientific consensus. If people need to see sources on this, I've got at least 3 systematic literature reviews linked in my research doc, which show that yeah, gender transition does improve the mental health of trans people. These are broad collections of peer-reviewed study. This is the overwhelming trend in the academic literature. Matt's just wrong about that.
That's medicine. And so if you are struggling to accept who you were born as, what your actual biological identity is, I have all the compassion in the world for that. I mean, I can't imagine having that disconnect in my head.
I think that trans people are aware of their biological reality. We have to acknowledge that, biologically, we start out as the sex we're born as in order to medically transition into another sex or to change your sex characteristics. Like, you have to acknowledge the sex characteristics you were born with to even desire to change them. Trans people are absolutely aware and acknowledge, their biological reality, but people like Matt Walsh do not acknowledge the biological reality that hormones absolutely do change many aspects of your biological sex. Matt is the one who is disregarding reality here.
A source of immense despair. But what I hate is the medical professionals who, instead of helping you with that and instead of helping you to accept who you really are and find joy and fulfillment in it, they're trying to make a quick buck. And they're selling you false promises, and they're telling you that this stuff is based on long-term studies, and they're lying to you because it's not. There have never been any reliable long-term studies on almost all of this stuff, because the fact is that the medical industry only started doing this at such a large scale recently.
So Matt first made the claim that we don't have any long-term studies on like trans people or like gender transition. So let's just go to the research doc and dunk on that. Here's a study on the mortality of trans people. This study followed people for a median of 18.5 years. That's pretty long term. I have another longitudinal study on the well-being of trans people. This studied both qualitative and quantitative outcomes. So, we have both subjective and objective data on this one. Pretty cool. Study period 10 to 24 years. I mean, 2.5 decades is very long when it comes to research. I mean, if you're a researcher, you don't get to publish your study findings until 25 years after the start of your study. That's a really long-term commitment. There's a reason why most studies, only happen over the course of a couple years, but there are long-term studies that exist. The biggest longitudinal study on bottom surgery was a 50-year longitudinal study. This studied people for 50 years. Like, you can't get much better than that. I mean, if somebody, gets bottom surgery as an adult, be it like 18 plus, 50 years later, they're basically at the average lifespan of a human. This is about as long-term as you can get on the topic. We have 50-year longitudinal studies on bottom surgery. There are long-term studies that exist. I've showed 3 right here. And that's not even to even mention all of these systematic literature reviews. This systematic literature review of 55 peer-reviewed studies, this systematic literature review of 38 peer-reviewed studies, this systematic literature review of 29 peer-reviewed studies. We have all of these broad collections of peer-reviewed studies which show the same overwhelming trend that, yeah, gender transition helps trans people, and there's nothing that they're lying to trans people about. It is factually true that you can change aspects of your biological sex. It is factually true that you can change the gender role in which people perceive and treat you in and move through the world in a different lived social experience. Those are just facts, and facts do not care about Matt Walsh's feelings. The other thing that Matt says was that this was only been researched very recently. Research on trans people, at least research on like medical transition, originates to the Hirschfeld Institute in Weimar, Germany, like the 1930s. Now, a lot of this research was burned by the Nazi Party. However, this research has existed for almost 100 years now. And, you know, obviously, the fact that we have 50-year longitudinal studies, 25-year longitudinal studies, things like this, that shows that wide-scale trans research has been around for a lot longer than Matt Walsh is trying to claim. Yeah, he's just wrong on all of those points.
Have the data. They're pretending that they do. They're lying.
I just showed the data. I just showed data. You're the one who's lying, Matt.
And that's what I hate.
Yeah, I hate it when you lie about the data on trans people. You should apply the standard equally, and you should hate the lies that you're telling right now, Matt.
That's the immorality.
So we're clapping that we hate it when people lie right after Matt Walsh lied to this kid in front of an audience? That is very, very ironic. Hey gamer, if you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, smash the mother frickin' like button, and tap that bell icon. Everything you do helps me and the channel so much more than you realize. Thanks so much.